Welcome to Crystal Clear Truth with Crystal. My name is Crystal Nettle, and I have a revelation to share with the whole world. In 2001, I had a life-changing experience, and I was invited to go to the United Nations in Manhattan, New York. I was there 10 days, and it was an amazing, eye-opening, revelational 10 days that I've ever experienced in my life. The first day when I got there, there was a battle for me, and it's a spiritual battle we're up against with America's soul at stake. And we need, as we the people, need to go back to the Declaration of Independence, read it, get it in our DNA, that when there's a long train of abuse in our government, that we the people have not just the right but the duty to abolish the corrupt government and bring in new guards for the security of America's future. And a nation as strong as the family units and America's families has been fragmented and devastated far too long, and God is raising up His Remnant Army to draw the line in the sand and say enough is enough. While I was at the United Nations, I got the revelation that the republic that was founded on the gospel of Jesus Christ by our founding fathers was intended to be God's lighthouse for all nations to be harvested into the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And how I got that revelation was that these wonderful ambassadors and delegates that had a hope in their hearts when they come to the United Nations to see righteous change come into their country and into their nation. And what they helped me understand was that what is happening in America's policies affects their nation. And they are waiting for people to step up to the plate and enforce America's Constitution. And that means that we have to create policy that lines up with America's Constitution, and that is not the case going on in the United Nations. There's NGOs, non-government officials, that have perverted ideas that they want to enforce into government and into the courts. And what the United Nations does is that they violate the Constitution, bypass legislation, take the policies that are made in the UN and give it to the rogue, corrupt judges in the judicial system. And so what happens is that when a judge is handed down a policy like the rights of the child, and the summit at the United Nations was the Worldwide Children's Summit, and the subtitle was the rights of the child, which I had a big, huge, eye-opening revelation that is what's destroying families and children. So I was lobbying in the caucuses, and they had different caucuses for like the Islamic caucus, which is a lot of the Middle East countries. They had the Germany caucus and the Canada's caucus, and there was a delegate and ambassador that represented every country in the world. And so my lobbying was that what God showed me to lobby was to take the word rights and replace it with needs. When you walk into the United Nations, you see plastered on the walls, a child has a right for clean water, a child has a right for to be loved, has a right to be educated. And that didn't set right with me. And so I went to prayer over this, and it just dropped into my heart to say the child has needs and privileges. So I took that simple lobbying, but very powerful, to each caucus, and I shared that parental rights comes from God, and a child has a right to live, a God-given right to live. I am totally opposed to any kind of abortion for any excuse, because that's murder, straight out. And so I lobbied against the non-government officials that was there with sinister policy to bring homosexuality into kindergarten, to the kindergartners, and to implement into their curriculum that it's a pleasant lifestyle, an alternative lifestyle, which is an abomination with God, and the moral compass is just not the right lifestyle to live for anyone, let alone a child. And so God put this simple but powerful lobbying in my heart to share with the caucus that a child has needs rather than rights, and they have privileges. And when a child realizes they have rights, which the teachers have this training to push on the children, that if they don't like something at home, that they can call Child Protective Services, which really should be called Child Predator Services, because they have it in place where a child can say, my parents are abusing me, and then just, they're wanting me to clean up my room, and they're grounding me, and just on really allegations that are lies. A social worker can lie about the parents, go on the child's side if there's a rebellious child that would want to call their parents, call CPS on their parents, that they can remove that child without any due process. And so what is called is child trafficking in the first degree. And what I shared with the caucuses and the delegates and the ambassadors is that CPS, they get $89,000 per child per year from taxpayers' money. And so they line their pockets with everybody else that's involved, judges, lawyers, foster cares, homes. And I continue to share with them that when a child realizes that they have this ability to call CPS, that gives them this entitlement mentality, that you better do this for me or else. And they feel like, they can have the world handed to them on a silver platter. And so what I share as well is that over 80% of the children taken from the parents, they either run away and join gangs, they get into prostitution, they go to jail, or they're going to be 6 feet under. And most of the delegates, ambassadors, they really ran with my lobbying. And I had a Dr. Wilkins come to me and said that he was there at the United Nations for the last 10 years, and he's never seen the ambassador of Germany and ambassador of Canada embrace a conservative lobbying like what I was presenting with the children having needs rather than rights. And there was, and when I say delegates and ambassadors, I'm not going to say what nation was an ambassador or delegates, because it's been over 20 years, 2001, that since I was there, and I don't recall who's an ambassador, who's a delegate, because there's two different ones. And there was a ambassador I know that was from Sudan that she represented 14 countries. And she had tears, and she hugged me. She goes, "I want you to speak in my nation." And I had several ambassadors and delegates ask me to come to their nation and speak out because they have these issues and these crises in their land, in their nation. And I shared with them that, the percentage of the children taken should not be taken, that they have loving, caring parents. And I remember specifically the South Africa delegate, she was asking me to come and speak in her country because she said that's a real crisis in Africa. And so what they showed me was that these ambassadors and delegates showed me that what we're doing in America in government affects their nation. And we need to be a voice of God in high places. We need to be speaking out in our legislature branch. We need to speak out in Congress. We need to speak out in the city halls, wherever we can get our voice before a group that influences our children and families. We need to be there speaking out in behalf of the children and their loving parents, because they are just ravishing families 20 to 200 times a day across the nation. And so what God showed me was that the Republic was truly founded on the gospel of Jesus Christ to be God's lighthouse and salt to the nations. And I don't believe that that is a understanding or revelation that most Christians do not have, let alone we the people. And we need to get the message out that that the UN needs to go away. It really does, because they do have an agenda of being a one world order, globalism. And a lot of the ambassadors and delegates, they're desperate, so they resort to going to the United Nations expecting to get remedy for their nations, and they're not. They're just getting diabolical policy that we have now, that we're fighting in our school systems with critical race theory, transgenderism. And there was a really awesome lady that was there, that she wrote a book in 2001, and it was called "The Word Gender is Going to Be a Diabolical Attack from Hell on Our Nation." And it certainly is. That there's thousands of genders that the progressive deep state liberals have come up with to warp our children into destroying their moral compass and confusing them whether or not they're a boy or a girl. And she had this book, and I tried to research to where to get that book, and I have to no avail, have not found where that book is. But I remember distinctly she was saying that gender, the word gender, is really going to be an attack on our future generation. And she was absolutely spot on. And we have ministers saying gender, and conservative commentators saying gender. Lose the word gender and say, what sex are we, male or female? God created us in two different sexes: boy, girl, male, female, man, woman. And the word gender needs to be abolished, along with CPS organization, along with the child, which is Child Protective Services, and the biggest child trafficking ring in the world, just let alone in America. And the child with the children, with the Department of Education, needs to be totally abolished. And we need to be God's voice. Jeremiah, God told me when I was pregnant with my 32-year-old son, 8 months pregnant, that I was to be his mouthpiece to separate the precious from the vile. Jeremiah 15:19. To get rid of any suspicion of God's faithfulness. And I have been through so many fiery furnaces that I'm going to put on this podcast in the near future, because I have a lot to say about how, why, who, when. There's 5 different W questions we need to ask as critical thinkers as to who, why, when, and how America has fallen into gross darkness. And that is a narrative that needs to really be on the mouth of everyone who loves and cares for America and God and our children and families. So I'm going to end this right here. I came home from the United Nations radically changed, saying, Lord, I'm going to be everything you want me to be, nothing more, nothing less. And so I know that God is raising up his remnant army, and he is bringing a paradigm shift to America. And he's not going to let America fall into total destruction. He's not. America is the lighthouse, and we're going to restore the republic to be God's lighthouse for all nations. And God is raising up his remnant army, and we are going to bring a paradigm shift in America that is going to shake, bake, and awake everyone that has breath within them. So anyway, I'm going to end it right here and just pray that people hear what I'm sharing and share it with others. And I hope that this gives some understanding of how God intended our America's God-ordained constitutional republic to be his lighthouse, shining bright for all nations. So you have a blessed evening, and I will talk with you again. Good night.